Okay, so welcome everybody. This is From Apprehension to Advancement, a strategic framework for future-ready AI pedagogy by Matt Stilwell. And I'll pass it to you, Matt.
Yes, thank you, Jessica, so much. And thank you all for being here today. I'm only maybe slightly intimidated by the slate of sessions, but it's always good to go earlier in the week rather than later. So I feel like I'll be all right. And as Jessica said, this session is about apprehension and advancement. I am an instructional coach and English faculty at Front Range Community College at our Larimer campus in Fort Collins, Colorado, and I have been I wouldn't say obsessed, but I have been engaged in the AI conversation since about December of 2022. And as an instructional coach, I have been helping folks reconcile their anxieties around how this technology is transforming education and learning, and also building a slate of professional development activities to help people manage this transitional stage. So, as we continue, and if at any point there's a pressing question, I will do my best to kind of look sideways at the chat, but Jessica will also be helping us if you have any questions in the moment. But I hope at least one thing that I have to share today will be helpful for you. And it's 50 minutes, right, Jessica? Sorry, I should. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, that's right. And I'll give a 5-minute warning.
Beautiful. Thank you. So let's dig in and look at a couple of models that we might leverage in order to come up with a strategic framework to future ready our pedagogy. So today's session, first, we're just going to set the stage. I know you all probably already know this, but we're going to talk a little bit about why AI in this current moment is so disruptive. Then we're going to transition to how can we build teaching capacity with all of our other duties as teachers, preparation, class time, assessment, and now AI. How can we fit AI literacy or our own AI learning or capacity for AI implementation and adoption into our teaching? And then that's going to roll into once we are prepared as teachers and we feel we have a capacity, what are some strategies that we can use? And I'm going to be referring to the trust framework for redesigning curriculum and assessments. So, why is AI in education so disruptive? And again, this is not going to be surprising to particularly this group if you're attending ELK, but it's really destabilizing our traditional model of education where the instructor, the curriculum, and the content are the primary authorities. And I'm not suggesting that we're taking a disciplinary approach to, and by that I mean a policing approach to AI use and the curation of knowledge, but traditionally, faculty curated the knowledge. Students had to be in a certain place at a particular time in order to access the content. Now, content can be accessed in a variety of ways and a variety of methods, right? And credentials signaled mastery of scarce expertise. Well, now we're in a situation where AI can take expertise, right? It's not just artificial intelligence, it's artificial expertise. And it's really putting some stress on our traditional industrialized transactional model of education. In addition, as I've already mentioned, AI can produce, finger quotes, knowledge that challenges the primary authority of that instructor or that curriculum and that content. AI provides students expertise, finger quotes again, on demand, which decenters the authority of the instructor. And so this is really challenging traditional assumptions around pedagogy, curriculum, and learning. And I will say throughout this presentation, and there will be a slide coming up, there's very good reason to be concerned about the impacts that AI is having on learning, both within education and outside of education. But how are we going to manage ourselves, right? Avoid our overwhelm so that we can help students reconcile the challenges that AI is presenting to their learning. And then finally, AI is causing us to reevaluate our roles as educators. I mean, I would say that many learning designers are teachers also, but not all teachers are learning designers, and that may be a controversial statement in some rooms and at some times, but we need to view our roles as teachers through the lens of learning design. And if we are to disincentivize abuses of AI and even some uses of AI, we should be thinking about how we are now designing learning experiences. We are not just delivering content, because the AI can do a passable job of delivering our content and providing answers to questions. We might now be turning our attention to some of the and I know it's an overused phrase, but 21st century skills of communication, collaboration, creativity, and critical thinking. How are we building those kinds of activities and skill bases into our curriculums? And that's where the trust model is going to come in at the end of our session today. And then rather than assessing products, what if we are integrating or creating a process-oriented curriculum where students have opportunities to fail at various times throughout the learning, which may disincentivize the use of AI to produce a product? So AI may be integrated into the process of learning, but not necessarily the product of learning or the artifact that we judge to encapsulate all of the learning outcomes or some of the learning outcomes that we want students to achieve over the course of a 15-week semester in a class. And I know this upside down Bloom's taxonomy with AI is also very controversial. That could be a whole session in itself. I merely use this example to show that AI can create some things. It can do some evaluation and application at this point in its evolution that's at least stressing our traditional understanding of where each of these skills happen in a particular learning process. So I am here using the work of Dr. Tazeen Daniels at the University of Michigan. I encountered her faculty critical engagement pyramid in a webinar last fall, and I was really struck by it. It resonated with me in various ways. And so for the purposes of this presentation, how do we build teaching capacity in order to just handle AI, in order to help our students do the same? Well, we should recognize that like we're going to be in different stages of development ourselves and different stages of AI literacy ourselves. And so at a 30,000 foot view, as you look at the critical engagement pyramid, there's going to be some of us who are going to be apprehensive. And we may not have entered the pyramid yet, and that's okay, right? We have to help each other and meet each other where we are in the process of either exploring, approaching, adopting, or advancing, or abstaining in the integration of AI into our curriculums and with our students. So we might begin apprehensively, and then what do we need as we're approaching AI tools? And then when we decide to actually adopt, and in the adopting stage or level, we also have the abstaining level. And we have to be careful when we are talking about AI and how it's being adopted in higher education to leave space for critical non-adoption or informed non-adoption. We, I think, still need some skepticism and some principled resistance in areas to offset our adoption strategies. And as Dr. Daniels suggests, we may move forward, we may pause, or we may circle back, right? Like I have some days and some weeks where I'm extremely apprehensive about whether or not integrating AI tools into my curriculum in a particular course is appropriate, right? So I'm not always advancing. Some days I'm abstaining. Some days I'm like, I don't want to use this tool today. Can you please just turn off the AI summary in my Google searches? And there's a good comment in the chat by Kate, right? The abstention and adoption is also being mirrored by students. So thank you for that comment, because we could look at the faculty critical engagement period also through the lens of students and also staff, right? And I think we're all sharing a similar experience. So what do some of these things look like in practice? And so when we're apprehensive, we might not have the access to Gen AI tools that we need. We might be overwhelmed. It's not because we don't want to join the conversation or begin using the tools. We just don't know where to start, right? And this is where we can start some trust building and some basic literacy. And as I mentioned earlier, there are some very good reasons to be apprehensive about this technology. I've included a link to that infamous or famous MIT study, Your Brain on ChatGPT. We might have concerns about cognitive offloading and also cognitive debt and critical thinking. I have a couple of images here from the Digital Education Council's survey of faculty from last year, and faculty are generally cautious in their approach to AI and teaching, although we're starting to see more survey data that's suggesting that more and more teachers are using it in some capacity. And we are also apprehensive because we worry that students may become too reliant on AI tools. In fact, we may become too reliant on AI tools. So it's sometimes maybe good to take a break sometimes and reflect on our AI use. And then, of course, we have the environmental concerns about AI, which continue to appear in many of the headlines. So we should recognize that there is a place for apprehension. And as we get to abstaining, we'll talk a little bit more about what that looks like. So as we begin to approach this technology, we need safe spaces to experiment, right? We need safe places where we can engage in low stakes ways to introduce ourselves to this technology and build our own confidence and agency. You can maybe tell me in the chat how you feel about this term. I feel like AI literacy and fluency are becoming so overused that they're becoming tropish. And I'm working on a new phrase, AI agency. How do we build confidence as we're approaching this technology to build agency, not only for ourselves, but also for students. And so a couple of examples that I have included here at Front Range Community College, we, over the last 3 semesters, have been facilitating an AI Academy for instruction. And what we've discovered is that we're actually going to need multiple levels of this academy. Right now, we only have one level. And so there might be folks joining that are apprehensive and folks that are also adopting, and they have different needs. And so as you're thinking about the professional development of faculty at your institutions, you're going to want to meet faculty where they are and teachers where they are, so that you might have a couple of different levels. There might be a first level, a second level, and a third level even. We also have, through our Teaching Excellence Center, we are offering AI support reflective practice groups where we can just come in and have conversations that keep it real, and people can express their frustrations, can express their anxieties about the technology, and also their reasons for abstaining or non-adoption in a safe, supportive space that we can all learn from. And then as we begin adopting, our needs change, right? As we're adopting the technology, we need advanced support, we need validation, and we need networks. And again, I am stressing that uncritical adoption of AI tools is nearly the same as uncritical non-adoption. So we need to be using tools consistently to build engagement, but we also need to be doing that critically. And so as part of our AI Institute, a couple of the tools that I'm modeling here are Notebook LM, if you're familiar with Notebook LM. This is my Lit 1015 course assistant that I share with folks in professional development opportunities who are looking for specific use cases and tools to use. And then also, this is the enterprise version of Copilot that is integrated into my Outlook and my entire Microsoft Office suite. And again, we can't make assumptions about what folks know and where they are in their own learning process. And so, to some extent, I would consider the use of a course assistant in, say, Notebook LM or more advanced uses of Copilot in your workflow, in email, and in the Microsoft Office suite as requiring more support. And then abstaining, which is actually which is an important part of this pyramid. I was in a webinar yesterday where a colleague said, I have a tremendous amount of respect for my colleagues who are expressing principled resistance and abstaining from using these tools, but it needs to be an informed choice, and it needs to be grounded in a way that you can share with students, right? So you can share your values around AI use with your students, and also you're still engaged in shaping critical literacy. So we may be approaching it from a different angle, from an opt-out side. And again, I would also suggest that as we're implementing curriculums, we should be providing students opt-out options, even when we are integrating AI use into particular assignments or activities. And we should also beware of assessing like the actual AI use itself and not the learning that's happening in the activity. I don't know if that makes sense as I listen to it, but what I mean by that is we should decouple the assessment for like using a tool from the learning that's actually happening in the tool. And a couple of examples I'm sharing here of abstaining is the two-lane assessment approach from the University of Sydney. If you're familiar with this, there are for assessment security, there's a secured lane and an open lane, right? There's a level of AI use in lane one and lane two that differs, right? And you are also assessing, like if you're assessing learning, it might be secured, right? You might be limiting AI use there. If you're assessing for and as learning, then you might have a more open approach. So as you're abstaining, it might not be total abstention, but you might have lanes or levels of AI use. But I think it's also important to recognize that even in curriculums that are adopting and advancing AI use, I think it's still healthy to implement some like no AI exercises, right? Where students aren't actively using the AI tools, but they might be critiquing output that is both human or first human generated and then AI generated critiques. I think we should also recognize the growing importance of collaborative and active learning environments where students are learning collaboratively, but also without AI tools. We can also implement other curricular changes like we think first and write first. So maybe we're not entirely abstaining, but we're delaying AI integration because we are emphasizing brain first learning. And then we can focus on memory and ownership in different ways. Because again, I think as teachers, we value student ownership over their learning, and they value it too. They are already expressing that they want to create genuine, authentic, intellectual products, right? Or intellectual, they want to show their intellectual progress and learning and don't want to be using AI. And so, how do we also meet them there? And then finally, there's advancing. And so you might have folks that have a deep knowledge of Gen AI's possibilities and risks. And again, we need to still be aware of the risks. The more I use this technology, the more I learn about it, the more concerned some days I become with how the technology is advancing without our ability to provide guardrails at a governance level or a regulation level. So when we're advancing, we're still recognizing the risks. And we might also, though, be becoming mentors, and we're still modeling ethical and productive use at those moments. And I just noticed I have a typo. This presentation was not, none of this presentation was created by AI, but we're skeptical while shaping institutional strategy. And I think even as we're learning and from an abstaining perspective, we can still shape institutional strategy. I think we still have an important role and important voice to share with our institutions. Yeah, Leanne, thank you. I appreciate your comment there. Okay, so now we have talked about the critical engagement side. Where are we as teachers? What are our values? Where are we in our AI journey and also in our professional development? Now, how do we begin redesigning curriculum and maybe assignments? And what sort of framework can we develop to help us manage that in addition to interfacing with students? So the critical engagement pyramid is more about us and our development and our AI agency, if you will. And now the trust framework is as we begin to take where we are and meet students where they are by using transparency, real world application, universal design for learning, social knowledge construction, and trial and error in order to have a conversation with students that is communal, right? Where we are actually collaborating together. And so, in terms of transparency, as we're building trust, I'm again, this will come as no surprise to you. Having clear syllabus and assignment guidelines is part of transparency. I provide an example of Leon Furz's AI assessment scale as well here, because you might be sharing this transparently with students. You might have activities or assignments that have no AI, right? There might be assignments where you're just planning to use AI. You might be collaborating with it, fully using it, or exploring it. But again, this should reflect where you are in the faculty engagement pyramid. If you are abstaining, then maybe you might be focusing on either no AI or AI planning, right? If you are advancing, you might be integrating an AI tool fully into your curriculum. But the important thing here is that we're being transparent with students. We're letting them know, hey, I'm apprehensive today about your use of AI, and I fear for your future. Right? And Kate mentioned too that that apprehension can come from how aggressive some companies are about promoting their AI solutions. And it's true. And students want us to help them manage that kind of pressure as well. Are we transparent? Because I hopefully have framed each of the elements of this framework as positive, rather than trying to decrease something. I want it to increase something. So if our expectations around this technology are clear, if our assessment around this technology is clear, then academic engagement might actually increase. And we may or may not actually be using AI tools in the process of learning at this point. AI does provide us a lot of ways to insert real world application into our curriculum. Academic integrity also increases when there's a personal connection, right? And I'm sure you're familiar with some of the literature on how AI tools can help us personalize learning. This is an example from my Introduction to Literature course, where I asked students to pretend that Franz Kafka's A Hunger Artist is not a work of fiction, but a documented case involving extreme fasting. As a biology or nursing student, what kind of biological phenomenon would you initially think this is describing? We could use this as a way to encourage real world application, and we could flip this around, and maybe we might be pretending that there's a real case for biology and nursing students, and we're using the literature as an example of that case. But this is a way this is a way for us to think about activities or discussions in class where we might pose questions in our discipline that have a contextual connection to where students are at and what students want to learn. And then there's universal design for learning. Motivation increases, right? When students have options. And the example that I have shared here is from Jose Bowen. It's from his Teaching Change work, but he is also a co-author of Teaching with AI with Eddie Watson. And if we are interested in encouraging intrinsic motivation and disincentivizing extrinsic gratification by getting an answer through an AI tool, then we might also consider redesigning our assignments to include options to build engagement and optimism and agency. And so I have actually adapted the I care, I can, I matter structure for my assignments, but I also give students options for how they can meet the learning outcomes in my courses, how they can show competency and mastery. And I understand this is not the case in all disciplines. I teach largely in literature and composition, but the extent to which we can offer students different ways of engaging in our curriculum and with our curriculum, and how they can have other ways of acting and expressing themselves while still meeting the learning outcomes, I think is going to disincentivize the use and abuse of AI tools and quite possibly increase motivation. And then I know folks sometimes in sessions that I have facilitated uh, uh, think when I say it's never been more important to be human right now, as someone who proposes to be, an AI expert of sorts. I think social knowledge construction, collaborative learning is more important now than ever. To the extent, I know this is, an e-learning conference, and many of us are not teaching in face-to-face classrooms. I think social knowledge construction can still happen in important ways in online learning and digital learning. But to the extent that we can uh, build peer accountability and collaborative learning into our curriculums, I think is also going to help students make good choices about the tools that they're using. And so Dr. Tori Trust in this model, this is one of her examples. You can just, if you are building collaborative activities for students, you can just ask them. You can build a reflective component into an existing assignment or activity where you ask them, right? If you worked in groups, did you contribute to your other group members' learning? If you worked in groups, did your group members possibly contribute to your learning, right? If you worked alone, did you share your project or discuss it with anybody else? If you worked alone, did you seek out feedback from classmates or the instructor? So, building opportunities for students to have experiences with each other and with you as a teacher that can't be repeated or created by a large language model, I think is an analog approach to helping students and us and teachers really focus on the social knowledge construction that takes place within our disciplines and within our classrooms, and also help us feel better about the ways that AI tools might be impacting learning and critical thinking. And then finally, trial and error. Focusing, and again, this is appearing a lot in the literature, process-focused assessment rather than high stakes pressure. And again, depending on your discipline, depending on the flexibility you have within your curriculum, it might be hard to have more low stakes activities and assignments, and some high stakes assignments are required in some disciplines. But focusing on the process as much as the product, the exam or the paper, can also promote academic integrity and engagement, and also allows students to fail forward. In the age of AI, one strategy, maybe I should have included that as an example, that we can use in order to help students experience trial and error and navigate academic integrity as they are tempted to use AI tools, is to allow students to withdraw a project or a draft, right? Um, they may have run into a time crunch. You could have a course policy or an assignment policy where, depending on how you've defined AI use versus abuse, you allow students an opportunity to retract a project or an activity or an assessment, effectively giving them a second chance to rethink their choice and allow them to fail forward without a grade implication, usually negative. So engaging in more regular low stakes assignments where students can fail and fail forward is also going to disincentivize certain uses and absolute abuse of AI tools. Among my many interests as an instructional coach, another is non-traditional grading methods. So I use contract grading in my classes. You could also use competency-based assessment. I also have an element of self-assessment in my contract grading. And this also allows us to emphasize the process, right? When has a student achieved a competency? And then we can provide that student the feedback that they need and the safety that they need to learn to mastery in a particular unit or on a particular assessment or in an entire class. And then finally, building teaching capacity builds trust. I'm hearing this more and more from colleagues and in webinars that I've been attending, that AI, among the most damaging consequences of AI has been the loss of trust between teachers and students. We no longer trust one another, right? Teachers, and I'm not saying anybody's coming from a place of malice. I'm just saying, I think we all have that spidey sense in our classes when a student submits a piece of work and you're like, man, I don't know. I don't know if this feels like this student's authentic work. Do they have ownership? Do they have authorship? That hopefully is an opportunity for a conversation and a second chance. However, we don't always have time and flexibility to build that into our curriculum. But how do we build trust? How do we share our values around learning, right? Forget AI for a moment. What are our values around authentic learning? How do we build those into our AI competencies and agencies so students also know that we are coming from a place of goodness? One of my favorite current writers right now has a Substack, and it's called Slow AI. And recently I read, and it's Dr. Sam Illingworth. I recently read one of his articles on how our AI training models are not necessarily working. And going back to the faculty critical engagement pyramid, going back to redesigning our curriculum for students, we should be incorporating participatory elements. We should be using activities. We should be testing tools and allowing students to test tools against their own, if not expertise, their own learning, right? Or interrogate outputs through the lens of professional or personal knowledge or lived experience, right? Whether we're advancing, adopting, abstaining, approaching, apprehensive, at some point we need to have a knowledge of the tools, and it needs to be a critical knowledge so that we can evaluate not only the inputs but the outputs, right? And so critical engagement is important at whatever level we are choosing to engage. But as we're building elements of universal design, of trial and error into our curriculums, what are examples that we can provide students where we've tested these tools and found them lacking and limited? Those examples are still as instructive as examples of when a tool worked well. I have used in the past, well, this spring, I was continuing to use my tutor chatbot in my introduction to literature classes, and about 2/3 of my class wanted to abstain from using that tutor chatbot, and I let them, right? Because it was a learning moment for me. However, I will say in the first week of class, I handed them out a copy of our syllabus and our course schedule. And then we did some sample prompting of my course chatbot. And I just asked them, is this chatbot giving you good information? And I had them look, is the first assignment due date correct? Are the dates of the drop and withdraw dates correct? Um, is my policy on AI use correct when we asked the chatbot? And they all were, right? However, the students were still saying AI lies and AI hallucinates. And it's true, if you're using it untutored, if you're using it unguided, you might get bad information. But I feel like I built a little bit of trust with my students there by showing them in an activity, right? Here's the chat bot. Here is the syllabus. Is it giving you good information or not? And I think that's an example of testing the tools against things that we think we know and that we have access to. And then finally, as I alluded, well, as I mentioned, I said it differently earlier. I think it's really important to be human and collaborative right now and to build community. As Ethan Malik would say, we need to be the human in the loop. We're always going to need teachers and humans in the loop. Even the tech industry is learning that they need the people because they're hiring some of them back. So I that is the extent of the presentation. I love that we have 7 minutes left. If anybody would like, I'll go through the chat to see if I missed anything, but if anybody has any questions or would like to unmute and share, please feel free. And this is me really being quiet.
Thank you, Matt, for a great presentation. And those of you in attendance, feel free to share questions in chat or over mic. I can kick us off if we don't have any explicit questions right now. I was curious, Matt, any patterns you see between these, the trust framework and working with your faculty in live or synchronous classes versus asynchronous? Um, because I know it can be really extra challenging, especially in asynchronous classes where you don't have that in-person opportunity for trust building in the way that you described.
Yeah, absolutely. I myself teach online as well, and I think it takes a little more approach, or I mean, a little more thinking to get there. Jennifer also asked for suggestions for scaffolding assignments in an online course. I think there are, without using too much AI, if you're just using a regular course management system or learning management system, I think that there are ways to. I use the discussion tool in D2L to create some of that scaffolding. So, what I have students do is when I have them use an AI tool, I have a piece of curriculum that I'm having them interact with, say a short story, and then I have them complete whatever domain specific or content specific activity I want them to complete. And then I have an AI component where I have them, okay, take that activity, right, that you just did. You started brain first. Now ask an AI tool to do it. And I just ask them to copy and paste whatever the tool gives them into the discussion. So then, and then when you get like 12 or 15 students who have done that, you get to actually critique whether or not the outputs are any good. And it's better if different students are using different tools. So you can compare Claude to Gemini, and you can compare, Gemini to Perplexity or Copilot. Um, and again, I think it just like rather than having that face-to-face collaborative community, it's much harder to build, but I think you can still scaffold that, right? I don't know if that worked, Jessica, or
Yeah, I think that's helpful. And I really like that idea of using the discussion board in a more lively way, because I know discussion boards are now kind of controversial. I'm going to sneak in one more question and then I have to
yeah.
jump off because I'm moderating a 4 o'clock. But um, Kate had a question. Um, I love this framework. How have faculty responded to the assertion that AI challenges their authority and the traditional model of a teacher as a disseminator of knowledge and the classroom as a space where knowledge making takes place?
Yeah, yeah, Kate, and tongue in cheek, not well. Right? I mean, like again, we all we all we were all successful in a system that where we acknowledge the role of the teacher as sacrosanct. At least I did, right? And so I think that this is part of the panic and part of maybe some of the moral outrage around how AI is really impacting student learning. And I'm not suggesting that everybody feels that their authority is being challenged, but we're also in a difficult space. We are also trying to mediate the impacts of this technology on student learning, and we're between the technology and the students. And I also like the way that you ended that question, Kate, talking about the class, like where does knowledge making take place, which I think is also connected to Jessica's question and that idea of how do we build digital and online learning environments, asynchronous environments, because that's a place where knowledge making happens too, right? Now, I don't have necessarily a good example or a good activity to share with you right now off the top of my head to address that, but I think this is one of the questions that we're wrestling with. Are AI tools changing where knowledge making takes place? And Jennifer, yes, you're very welcome. Thank you. It would work in a skills-based course, but exams in a content course, I think maybe using a reflective component, like asking students, did you use an AI tool to study after the exam? Like rather than like an exam review session afterwards where you look at the results, you might just have them reflect. You could create an exam survey, right? Or like, what was your process? You could ask them process questions and the extent to which they used AI tools in their study process and whether or not that was helpful. That might be one possible approach. So I respect your time and I thank you all for attending this session. I appreciate you all I hope the rest of your afternoon goes swimmingly. And don't be strangers. If you need anything, you can find me. Thank you all. Thank you, Jessica. You're all very welcome.
Thanks, everyone. And anyone who's still here, feel free to fill out our feedback survey. So thanks, Matt. It was nice meeting you, and I'll
Yeah,
see you all in the next round. See ya.
right on. Take care, Jessica. I'm gonna head on into the dusty sunset.
Bye.